It is game day in Kansas City. The Royals getting set for Game 3 tonight. Series tied at 1 with the New York Yankees. Donald Trump's hot streak continues. I don't know who's hotter right now. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for being here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Yes, the K is going to be rocking tonight. But I don't know if it's rocking more than the Donald Trump campaign headquarters after the last 24 hours. That saw Kamala Harris show up on The View. And I told you on Monday, I said, the fact that Kamala Harris is going on a media blitz is a terrible sign for her in the campaign. The more Kamala Harris talks, the worse it will be for her. And that is exactly what you have seen unfold over the last couple of days. But nothing that Kamala Harris has said publicly has been as damaging as what she said yesterday on The View in what was supposed to be one of the all-time friendly softball interviews and turned catastrophic.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Game, set, match. That's it right there. There is nothing that comes to mind. We all understand it's a tightrope for Kamala Harris. She can't say, yeah, this guy Joe Biden, he really stunk as president. She can't do that. But to not have a prepared answer in that moment, when people have made it very clear they don't like this administration, and Kamala Harris and her team has done everything in its power to basically try to run and hoodwink the American people into thinking that she has had no control over any public policy in America over the last 4 years. And by the way, it has worked on some Americans. But then the question comes, okay, what are you doing different? What would you have done different? Nothing about the Afghanistan withdrawal, prices skyrocketing 20-25%. Nothing about foreign affairs when it comes to Israel, when it comes to Iran, when it comes to Putin, Ukraine, the pullout from Afghanistan. Nothing at all that Kamala Harris can point to that she would do differently. And the fact that she's not prepared for that question goes to show you when you go this long without doing anything serious on the campaign trail, it's going to come back to bite you when you actually finally get some questions. If Kamala Harris had spent the first few weeks after she was installed as the nominee in late July, where she was going through press conferences, she was answering questions off the cuff, whether it's on tarmacs, wherever it might be, she would have been better prepared. If she had made this flub back in July or August, let's be honest, most people wouldn't really remember it by now. And by now, she'd have some canned answer that would at least be palatable to an unknowing and ignorant portion of the American public. But the fact that we're sitting here 27 days out, and now is the first time she really gets asked, arguably, the most obvious question somebody should ask Kamala Harris, and of all people, it comes from Sonny Hostin of The View, who finally says, okay, what do you do different from Joe Biden the last 4 years? And she says, nothing comes to mind. That is brutal. And you don't have to just take my word for it. Here is CNN contributor Molly Ball yesterday reacting to that moment from Kamala Harris.
I'm surprised, frankly, that she doesn't have more to say about this, given that she and her campaign know that this is one of the main questions that voters have about her. And one of the main things she's been trying to establish as part of her candidacy is the idea that she would represent a break from the past 4 years, and to not be able to come up with something to say in that moment. She continues to not be particularly nimble on her feet in a lot of these interviews, and this is a very obvious question that gave her an opportunity, frankly, to differentiate herself in a way that would have made news, that would have answered, I think, the curiosity of a lot of voters.
Kamala Harris from Molly Ball, CNN contributor. And not exactly nimble on her feet. How about this? She's not exactly nimble inside of her brain. That's the better way to put it for Kamala Harris. They have tried to walk this near impossible tightrope of why the American voters should take Kamala Harris very seriously. She's the number 2 in the country, but she's in no way responsible for anything that's happened in the country, and she's really the change agent of the election. They've run this campaign, obviously, as if Donald Trump has been the incumbent. And you could never pull this off unless you had a sycophantic media that will carry your water, which obviously Kamala Harris has had. And while the 60 Minutes interview a couple of nights ago was one of the better pieces of journalism I've seen against a major Democrat in a long time, The View was not supposed to be that. The View was supposed to be yuck it up for an hour, slap each other on the back, take a couple of selfies, and call it a day. And instead, it was The View that turned disastrous for Kamala Harris. Because this is not a serious individual. This is not a serious politician. This is not somebody who has the political chops to be the leader of the free world. Kamala Harris is truly an empty pantsuit, an empty vessel, however you want to frame it. This is not somebody who has any business being even this close to the presidency. And that's why when it came out on Sunday that she was doing a media blitz, I said, one, this has to be bad for her. Her campaign has hit her for the better part of 2 months. Now suddenly, in the last 30 days, they want her doing media? No way is that a good sign for the campaign. They were desperate. They were trying to get her to be more likable. They were trying to get her to be relatable. And while the week's not done yet, we've seen a 60 Minutes debacle. We have seen an all-time great screw-up on The View. Maybe the greatest screw-up of the campaign thus far by the candidate. And we haven't even gotten yet this morning to the Howard Stern catastrophe, which was really more of an embarrassment for Howard Stern because that guy has gotten so neutered, it's unbelievable what's happened to Howard Stern. But this continues a third straight week of incredible, incredible news for Donald Trump. And all he's got to do is hang tight, sit back, smell the roses, barnstorm the swing states, don't do any crazy media like 60 Minutes, and let the good times roll. And in 27 days, I firmly believe, as we sit here right now on October the 9th, Donald Trump is going to win. Now, I get it. 27 days, plenty can happen. But based on where this thing is trending right now and what Kamala Harris is doing and what her team is making her do, that's the telltale sign to me that they know they are in very serious trouble in this election. 913-408-7957. It's a hump day. It's a game day. We got the K that's going to be rocking tonight. But you tell me, what's rocking more, the K or the Trump campaign? 913-408-7957 on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. It was a media blitz yesterday. We'll get to more of that. And plus, get to you, because I know you're fired up here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM and streaming online at KCMOTalkRadio.com.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Done. Finished. Sayonara. See you later. That could be, if we look back on this final 30 days of the 2024 election, that could be the nail in the coffin for the Kamala Harris campaign. You have already seen that comment from Kamala Harris on The View yesterday become an ad for the Donald Trump campaign. This is an ad that ran on TikTok yesterday. They used those words from Kamala Harris, and they rolled it into commentary following the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Take a listen.
Something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years.
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
The president's withdrawal was a complete and utter catastrophe. The images of people hanging off of planes and desperate parents handing their babies over the airport walls to soldiers are seared into our country's collective conscience.
The withdrawal was a catastrophe, in my opinion, and there was an inexcusable lack of accountability and negligence.
Prices for everyday things like groceries are still too high. You know it and I know it.
You are right. Prices, in particular for groceries, are still too high. The American people know it, I know it.
There you go. That ad from Donald Trump's campaign that started on TikTok last night using Kamala Harris's own words from The View, of all places. Who would have thought The View would have been the place that Kamala Harris stepped in it? But it shows you how unprepared she is for this moment. Victor's in Parkville on KCMO. What's up, Vic?
Oh, good morning, Pete. You know, I heard this and I just chuckled like you did. I mean, as good as the Royals going into the playoffs and playing against the Yankees is great. Okay, that doesn't really affect our lives nearly as much as the pile that Kamala keeps stepping in and smearing around. You know, and I like that they've actually done this ad, and all they really have to do is just keep playing that ad, and then just a litany of whatever the policies have been, whether it's the pullout in Afghanistan, whether it's immigration and all the crime and everything that's come around because of that, whether it's foreign policy, and now we have the war in Ukraine, the war now in the Middle East between Israel and everybody else there. And then, of course, just inflation. Just slam. I mean, inflation affects everybody. This woman is just so incompetent. It baffles my brain how 40% of the people, 40+% of the people are willing to vote for this individual.
Well,
I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a future conversation for now. Just got to get the win and move on there, Vic in Parkville. Thank you, my friend. Steven is in Kansas City. Steve, good morning. What's happening?
And choo-choo-choo, and Trump train running at full speed.
Woo! Let's go. Give me a big
really
one.
ironic.
Give me your best Ric Flair there, Steve. Go.
It's really ironic that the Waterloo of the Harris campaign may be the question from Sonny Hostin, the race-baiting ghoul of The View. But I mean, you know, this is a big time cleanup on aisle 6 when they had to go on Colbert to say, okay, well, we're going to put a Republican in the cabinet. That's the answer. You know, they're sort of tipping their hand here, like sort of to echo your remarks that by the sex podcast that they're going on, these are not venues. The average Colbert viewer is like 58 years old, and Howard Stern is a non-event anymore. These are not places where you're going to get new votes. Like I would put them on the Kelsey podcast. If she really wanted to get new votes, you know, get her on New Heights or something. This doesn't. It shows me that they have really bad internal polling. That this thing is boomeranging right. Trump may end up winning this by a few points if the polling is this bad.
Here's what they're doing right now. They're basically doubling down. They're trying to make it a base turnout election by going on these shows where it's just sycophantic in nature. It's only people who already were going to vote for her. So I think they're almost done with the swing voter, and they're basically saying to themselves, you know what, we've got to double down on basically our suburban housewife view watcher who might show up for us in the suburbs of Milwaukee, Detroit, Philadelphia, whatever. That's what they're doing here. You're right. New Heights would actually be a place where, you know, they might get some non-traditional voters, but you know and I know, I can't imagine the Kelsey bros going for that unless Taylor forced Travis to have her on the show.
She needs to fire her media advisors. I mean, this maybe she just can't do it. Maybe she just can't go and do these interviews, but
she can.
I mean, this was one of the worst rollouts I've ever seen.
She's not smart enough.
Terrible.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it. She's just not smart enough. Royals win today, Steve. You already partying? What do you got for me?
Yes, but Royals win 2. Royals win 2 in a row. We're going to close it out at home here.
All right, brother. Enjoy it.
Woo!
There you go. He's fired up. Woo! Woo! All right, 913-408-7957. What an exciting day we've got here in this town. Royals GM JJ Picollo is going to be here at 9:30. I know it's a ways away, but hang with us this morning when you get to the office. Stream us on your phone, on your Google, on your Alexa. That way you don't miss JJ Picollo coming up at 9:30, and Kevin Keatsman will be here in 1 hour to get you set for Game 3. My New York Mets got a big win yesterday, by the way, 7-2 over the Philadelphia Phillies, who I can't stand. I've sat in the bleachers there in Philly, gotten hot dogs thrown at me and beer dumped on me and the whole thing, so I cannot stand the Philadelphia Phillies. So the Mets are up 2-1. I put a little video up last night of the girls and I cheering on the Mets at home. So that's on my Instagram stories at Pete Mundo. You can see it there. We had a good time. It's fun when your kids start getting into sports. I like this phase of life where you're trying to teach them and I guess you could say indoctrinate them into your sports teams. That's the only time I'm okay with child indoctrination, when it's to your sports teams. So Claire says to me, Dad, do we like the Chiefs more than the Mets or the Mets more than the Chiefs? I'm like, no, they're just different sports. But we like the Mets in baseball because that's the only hometown team I still have. But I didn't have an NFL team. So I came here and the girls are all Chiefs fans. So everything's working out well. They've got one team that's really good and one team. If you're going to be a Mets fan, you got to find a team that's decent, that has some historical significance. And at least they've got that going for them, because in my lifetime, I have never seen the Mets win a World Series. I'm just saying. I've seen them get there twice, 2000 and 2015. And we know how that's gone. But most importantly, Mark is not betting against my team anymore. He tried to do that last week, and it didn't work out well for him.
I'm staying away from it. It could be an all-wild card ALCS and NLCS, which could be fun.
Yeah. Well, you get that hot streak, right, in baseball. You get the hot hand, and you've seen it happen here in recent years as well, John.
Happened for the 69 Mets.
Yes. That team got hot as the season went on, and the rest is history.
Yep.
Oh, man. Well, there's a lot happening, of course, in this town as well, and today's going to be an exciting day. The get-in price, I was looking at the tickets. I mean, I'm not going, but I was just curious looking at the tickets. And I'm telling you, you look at the get-in price tonight for the games, and let me see what the cheapest ticket is in the house today. You can get in the standing room right now for $120. Now, after the fees, that'll probably be $150. But the cheapest one right now I'm seeing, after that, it's $158. So you're talking a couple $100 when all is said and done to get into the K tonight. And it's going to be well worth your time. I think it's going to be rocking. I can't wait. 913-408-7957 as we roll through the 6 o'clock hour here on KCMO. Coming up, remember that Chiefs fan who was called a racist by Deadspin? Well, we got an update on that lawsuit we'll tell you about next. It was last November that a 9-year-old Kansas City Chiefs fan went to the game with his family in Las Vegas when the Chiefs played the Raiders and painted his face half black and half red and wore a Native American headdress, which, of course, you can't wear at Arrowhead Stadium, but other stadiums around the NFL are naturally not going to have the same rules as what you have here in Kansas City, because you might not play the team every year, and who's going to have rules about what opposing teams' fans can wear to games anyway? And this young 9-year-old was put in a tough position. He was shown on television, and he was shown on television with only the black side of his face painted. And that led to the woke social media and sports media cadre coming out and pushing this narrative that the kid was in blackface. He wasn't in blackface. His face was half red and half black. And he was in a Native American headdress. And guess what? It turned out he was of Native American descent. His father is Native American. But, why let the facts get in the way of a good story when you can push racism? And that's exactly what happened to this poor 9-year-old kid. The articles that were written about him, especially by the terrible sports media site Deadspin, was really some of the grossest things you could say about a 9-year-old. And this family has since sued. Now, the lawsuit, we've got an update on that. after yesterday a Delaware judge refused to dismiss a defamation lawsuit against sports website Deadspin over an article accusing a 9-year-old NFL fan and his family of racism over his game day attire. The article was written by this goof named Karen Phillips, and he wrote this the day after the game, the day after this kid's picture went viral. And his article read in part, the NFL needs to speak out against the Kansas City Chiefs fan in blackface and native headdress. He adds, quote, they're doubling up on the racism. Are you going to say anything, Roger Goodell? A reference, of course, to the NFL commissioner. In the article, Karen Phillips, who has since, by the way, been laid off by Deadspin, they blew out the entire staff. They sold the outlet shortly after this happened. But Karen Phillips wrote at the time that this 9-year-old boy had found a way to hate black people and the Native Americans at the same time. And he suggested the boy had been taught hatred by his parents. It was as gross an article as you're going to see against a child. But it also, sadly, was par for the course for outlets like Deadspin, which used to be normal sports websites and then became just this hateful, left-wing, quasi-sports operation that started to fall flat on its face. Once Deadspin got political, that was the end of it. It used to be just like a run-of-the-mill decent sports site, and then it mixed sports and politics of the left-wing variety, and it destroyed itself. And this article about this 9-year-old Chiefs fan was the final nail in the coffin. So for a long time, Deadspin's been trying to figure out, or the parent company of Deadspin has been trying to figure out a way to basically stay afloat while figuring out a way to get out of this lawsuit. And they couldn't do it. Deadspin wanted to have the case heard in California, where the family lives. You know, they went from California to Las Vegas for this game last year, instead of Delaware, which is where Deadspin's former parent company, Geo Media, is incorporated. Well, that didn't work out for them. They could not get the case moved to California. Couldn't do it. And then this week, Judge Sean Lugg denied Deadspin's motion to dismiss the family's lawsuit, rejecting arguments that the article was opinion and thus protected from liability for defamation. The judge wrote here, quote, Deadspin published an image of a child displaying his passionate fandom as a backdrop for its critique of the NFL's diversity efforts, and in its description of the child crossed the fine line, protecting its speech from defamation claims, the judge wrote. Adding, quote, having reviewed the complaint, the court concludes that Deadspin's statements accusing the 9-year-old, H.A., as he's referred to in court documents, just by his initials, of wearing blackface and native headdress to, quote, hate black people and the Native American at the same time, and that he was taught this hatred by his parents, are provable false assertions of fact and are therefore actionable. Now, this is a very fine line. I admit, as much as we talk about media lying on this show, it is a very fine line to where I want judges involved in determining what is free speech and what is not free speech. But when you've got situations like this 9-year-old boy who is a Chiefs fan showing up at a game, and you have people claiming he is in blackface when it is beyond obvious, if you did 2 seconds of research, that he was not in blackface, that his face was painted half red and half black, then you know what? That is a provably false assertion, as the judge notes here. And you know what? You should be held liable for that. When the facts are smacking you square in the face and you choose to not use those facts to try to prove a political point, guess what? I'm with the judge here. That is a provably false assertion, and your free speech, as far as I'm concerned, should not be protected in that case because you are clearly lying about somebody. It's just like the Covington Catholic kids. That whole deal with CNN, the kids who were, on the steps of the Supreme Court a few years ago when Trump was in office, and how that went down. Well, that resulted in a lawsuit that was settled for hundreds of millions of dollars, John. And to me, That's very similar to this.
We have slander and we have libel.
Yeah.
Those are pretty much absolutes.
No doubt about it.
Slander, the spoken word, libel, right, for the written word.
Yep. And that's part of what this case is about. And that's why I have zero sympathy for the writer, zero sympathy for the parent company of Deadspin, who has employed race baiters like this. That's what they do. They use sports to race bait from a left-wing political angle. And it finally caught up to him with this 9-year-old Chiefs fan who turned out to be of Native American descent. His not only not Native American descent like Elizabeth Warren trying to trace her roots to being 1,026th Native American. No, not like that. I mean, like his father was is in a tribe. Not like, my great-granddad's second cousin was, Sitting Bull or something like that. I mean, no, like his father is part of a tribe. That is completely different. And he was legitimately of Native American descent. And he did not have blackface. Now, as I said a year ago, if you're a parent, maybe you use red and yellow, maybe you use red and white. When you've got a good seat at the game and you know you might pop up on TV, fine. Doesn't matter, though. The lawsuit is still incredibly legitimate. And you've got a 9-year-old Chiefs fan that is ultimately going to sink Deadspin, is how it looks like this is going to play out. 913-4087-95.7 as we roll through the 6 o'clock hour on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. As always, we are streaming on the iHeart and the TuneIn apps. As we take you into the next hour, Kevin Keatsman at 7:30. And at 8:05 this morning, the Virginia Lieutenant Governor and rising star in the Republican Party, Winsome Sears, is going to be on this show because she is coming to Kansas for an event that you are not going to want to miss out on. We'll tell you about that as well on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. So the Virginia Lieutenant Governor, Winsome Sears, the first black lieutenant governor, first statewide black official in the state of Virginia, and she filed last month to run for governor in Virginia because in Virginia, you only get one term. So Glenn Youngkin, who won a couple of years ago, is done. You only get one term as governor in Virginia. Winsome Sears is looking to be his replacement. Well, she's coming to Kansas on Monday for an event, Living the American Dream, an evening with Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. And she's going to be at Fiorella's event space here in Overland Park on 137th Street. That'll be once again on Monday night, 7:30. I'm going to be emceeing that event, and it's being put on by the Kansas Black Republicans, helping out in Kansas's 3rd Congressional District. She's a Marine Corps veteran, small business owner, a former legislator who advocates for conservative values, education reform, economic growth, and she's here to help a bunch of local officials, and I'll be emceeing that. So that's what she's coming on the show for at 8 o'clock. We're going to talk a lot about, of course, news of the day, the upcoming election, things like that. But it is going to be an outstanding time, and you can join us. You can RSVP by going to ksblackrepublicans.com. And no, you don't have to be black to attend. I'm emceeing it, okay, just so we're all clear on that. Anyone's welcome to attend. They're not doing race checks at the door. It's not like you got to, show your 23andMe or something like that. Show how black you are. Oh, gosh. Do we have that Joe? Where's that Joe Biden when I need it? Where is he? Come on. Oh, the clip's not working here for me, Mark. That's all right. I tried to hit it, and it goes, it's not available. It's not there. That's all right. But anyway, we'll see you out there. Meantime, Sharice Davids sent out an email here yesterday afternoon. And she sent out an email, your sitting congresswoman in the 3rd District, who this guy, Dr. Reddy, is trying to beat. And here's how it reads from Sharice Davids. Says here, quote, the Johnson County, Kansas Republican Party has been one of our opponent's most enthusiastic backers since he got into the race. They are determined to defeat Sharice and replace her with their chosen candidate, Prasanth Reddy. So take a look at what they had to say on the subject of abortion rights a few days ago. They made this comment on Dr. Reddy's Facebook page. who left it up and has not expressed a word of disagreement with it. This is a Facebook comment from the official Johnson County, Kansas Republican Party on Dr. Reddy's Facebook page. And it reads as follows regarding abortion. The argument of medical necessity is false. The trauma of abortion delivering, and I'm sorry to do this before 7 a.m., but I'm just reading the quote and the comment as it reads from the Johnson County, Kansas Republican Party. The trauma of abortion delivering a dead baby is not less than delivering a live baby. That is a lie they have perpetrated for years. However, many women do die from abortions. As for rape and incest, how did two wrongs make a right? A woman or a girl is raped, so now a murder must also occur. Women have health care. The baby inside them is not the woman's body. It is its own body and also deserves health care. Sharice Davids, in this email that they sent out yesterday, followed up that comment that they screenshotted and put in their e-blast. Quote, you read that right. One of Reddy's biggest backers is arguing against abortion rights, even in cases of rape, incest, and medical necessity. It's extreme, it's wrong, and it would be disastrous for women and families across Kansas, and Reddy won't come out and condemn it. And then it says, please donate here, Sharice Davids, and it takes you to the actblue.com donation page. Now, the reality is this. Sharice Davids has nothing to do with the issue of abortion as a congressperson. The issue of abortion is now handled at the state level. We know how that vote went in Johnson County, Kansas, and across the state of Kansas 2 years ago during the Value Them Both vote in August of 2022 after Roe got overturned. It didn't go the way I wanted it to go. It didn't go the way many of you wanted it to go. So Sharice Davids is simply playing politics here. And it's very predictable because, frankly, most Democrats are running on the issue of abortion. No matter how much or how little it actually has to do with their job, right? I'm much more bothered by Sharice Davids' votes to blow out the spending, which led to 25% inflation over the last 4 years. But she's not going to talk about that because, well, she doesn't want to. So there's no doubt this is gaslighting on this abortion issue by Sharice Davids. That being said, you understand that as a listener of this show. This is very smart politics from Sharice Davids and very dumb politics by whoever runs the social media account for the Johnson County Republican Party. To put something like this in writing in Johnson County, Kansas, where you know that people just voted 2 years ago on the abortion issue against you by about a 60-40 margin, is just dumb politics. When your opponent only has one issue to run on, don't give a reason to feed into that issue. Don't give them a reason to send out an e-blast to all of their supporters in Johnson County, which is what Sharice Davids did, using your words against yourself. Why would you do that? It's not that necessarily the belief is wrong, but politics is a game. It's a game. And you can either play the game to win or you can play the game to lose. And this is one of those completely avoidable mistakes. That's the thing. This is not like an oops, didn't see this one coming. It's like you don't think that Sharice Davids has people combing through the social media pages of her political opponents to try to use their words against them? Of course they do, as they should, by the way. That's what smart campaigns do. And now they've got a fundraising email out where they use the whoever is running Johnson County, Kansas Republican Party Facebook comments against them in a donation email. And the fact that whoever is running these accounts, whoever is posting these comments, doesn't think, hey, how could this be used against me? Tells me whether it's at the top to whoever the social media account manager is, should not have access to that Facebook page any longer. Because that is somebody who just does not understand the way the game is played. And instead stepped on the rake, and the rake has hit him square in the face. You got to understand the politics of the moment. And this was a gift, an absolute gift to Sharice Davids and her reelection campaign. So way to go. Coming up next, the Kansas City Star writes something that is just laughable. We'll get to it on KCMO. The Kansas City Star loves doing this nonsense. They love to find a couple of good old boys, grow up in rural Kansas or rural Missouri, and rag on their preferred party to rag on. That would, of course, be the Republican Party. 7:05 on a Wednesday. Game 3 of the ALDS is coming up tonight here at the K. First playoff game for the Royals at home in nearly 10 years. We'll have Kevin Keatsman on at the bottom of the hour at 7:35, and J.J. Piccolo, the general manager of the Royals, will be here at 9:30. So make sure you're here all morning long on KCMO. This was published in the Kansas City Star yesterday by a couple of guys, Roger Barnes and Don Smith. Oh, I'm sorry. Roger C. Barnes and Don C. Smith. They put their middle initials in their bylines.
Oh, yeah, all the farmers I know do.
These guys are Dodge City natives, in case you're wondering. Graduates of KU. I know, that's going to be surprising to many of you as well.
Talk about a bombshell. Yeah, not only not the middle initial, they often didn't use their own first names.
Yeah.
Had nicknames.
That's so true. So these guys are writing this article in the Kansas City Star, as they put it, as native sons of Kansas. All right. Headline: How great Kansas Republicans Bob Dole and Dwight Eisenhower would view Trump's GOP. As the presidential campaign enters its final weeks, they write, it's worth remembering the observations of 80 years ago by famed Kansas newspaperman William Allen White. Who? Jeez, even Bill O'Reilly is like, you got a reference from 80 years ago from a Kansas newspaperman from the Emporia Gazette? What?
I think the School of Journalism at KU is named after him.
Oh, okay.
I believe.
All right. Thank you for that, John.
So, yeah, he got that honor.
Okay. No, that's fine. I appreciate you.
The wrong school.
No,
I went to Baker. I don't know.
Mark's no help either as a Mid-American Nazarene guy. But anyway, we'll continue with the story. Someone can text in if that's the case or not. On May 15th of 1941, White wrote in his newspaper, the Emporia Gazette, quote, if this republic ever totters to its fall, it will be because the moron minority mind shall sometime, somewhere, somehow gain a party majority by unscrupulous leadership and vote with a fascist group. You know where this is going, right?
It is KUPS, and by the way.
Okay, thank you, John. Let's continue here in this piece. While not identifying him personally, of course, White was effectively describing Donald Trump's ascent to the pinnacle of American political power within a Republican Party that today is unrecognizable to nearly all pre-2016 party members. The words by the sage of Emporia ring as true today as when he typed them in his office. In fact, White's observations serve as a cautionary tale as the country prepares for the coming election. It is obvious, they write here, that Trump is not a serious person. He is essentially a carnival barker, huckster, and entertainer. So this article that was written by a couple of Dodge City KU guys, Roger C. Barnes, and Don Smith, Don C. Smith. Their middle initials both stand for chump, by the way, is so evident, but it's also very much 2016. This is an article that would have made sense back in 2016. Trump's a huckster. He's a carnival barker. He's not a serious politician. But it goes back to the old adage of Donald Trump where you don't take him literally, but you do take him seriously. And that is what his political opponents still fail to do 8 years later. They don't take him seriously, but they do take him literally, which is the opposite of how you should view Donald Trump. You know, Trump, listen, we talk about it all the time, right? Is he the perfect individual? Is he the perfect candidate? No, not really. Is he the perfect spokesman for his own policies? He's not. J.D. Vance does a better job explaining his policies than he does. Trump, the best this, the greatest that, like that's just how he speaks. That's who he is. You don't take him literally. but you do take them seriously. And the problem for these authors, who apparently have been in a coma for the last decade, is that there was a time when Donald Trump was president. And for all of the mainstream media drama that they created, that yes, Donald Trump did self-inflict on himself at times, the guy did have very effective policies. The guy did have a 4-year economic boom that was crushed by COVID. You did have far more peace around the world. It's not even it is not even comparable when you look at the world stage today versus where it was from 2017 up to 2020. It is not even in the same stratosphere. When you look at how the worst actors in the world have handled their own business over the last 3.5 years versus how they handled their business from 2017 to 2020. So for these two good old boys who grew up in Dodge City to write this about Trump and write this about, what Bob Dole and Dwight Eisenhower would say. With all due respect to Bob Dole and Dwight Eisenhower, and I have plenty of respect for both men and what they've done for Kansas and their legacies, I also don't really care. Because I'm just sitting here as an American citizen who can come to my own conclusions and can look at 2 4-year windows and say, well, one sure was a hell of a lot better than the other for the average American citizen, John.
Okay, time me. I'm going to hold my breath because the second part of this series is going to come out where these guys are going to turn their William Allen White goggles on the Democratic Party.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, etc. Right? So,
yeah.
I'm holding my breath.
Yeah, that's not happening. That's not happening,
Something
John.
tells me that I must go ahead and breathe.
Yeah. They end this piece here, by the way, in the Kansas City Star as follows. And this is once again Roger Chump Barnes and Don Chump Smith in a special to the Star headlined, How Great Kansas Republicans Bob Dole and Dwight Eisenhower Would View Trump's GOP. We are also reminded of White's observation about the nature of persuasion. To be persuasive, we must be believable. To be believable, we must be credible. To be credible, we must be truthful. Donald Trump is not believable, credible, or truthful. He possesses neither the personal character nor the moral compass to be allowed back into the White House. Well, what's weird for these guys is they never actually then say, go vote for Kamala Harris, which is kind of strange. But the reality is this. When it comes to presidential politics, you have two options when all is said and done. And while Donald Trump may not be, and I will say, is not the perfect candidate when it comes to a moral compass, the reality is this. There are two options. And one of those two options is far superior on the policy front to the other option. And it's not even close. The pain, the worldwide loss of life, the handling of the southern border, the economic issues, we've seen that over the last 3.5 years. Maybe Roger Barnes and Don C. Smith haven't seen that in their world. Barnes is now a professor at University of the Incarnate Word in San Antonio, and Smith is a professor of law at the University of Denver. So maybe they haven't seen that like you and I have seen this on Main Street. But the reality is, when you have two resumes side by side to look at, it's very obvious which one most Americans would prefer. And that's why things are trending the way they're trending right now in this 2024 election cycle. 913-408-7957. It is 7:14 on KCMO Talk Radio. Let's fit in Paul on KCMO. What's up, Paul?
Hey, Pete. Yeah, I would argue that John F. Kennedy wouldn't recognize today's Democratic Party, where you have a socialist ideologist in charge of the party that wants to raise taxes, take us to war, disarm us under the Second Amendment. I could go on. So, yeah, I could play that game, too.
Well, that's a great point. JFK is a Republican today. Very good point. Kevin Keatsman at the bottom of the hour, 7:35 here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. Bill O'Reilly has his morning update, and then Bill mentioned one of our states here on his show this week. I will play that for you next. Good stuff from Bill O'Reilly. We all know that when it comes to capitalism. That's really not high on Kamala Harris's list of things to do or promote. But Bill O'Reilly on his weeknight show, he does his show on BillO'Reilly.com. You see him on News Nation. He's built still an enormous brand in his post-Fox days. He is a friend of this show, a personal friend and a friend of the show. Well, he was talking about Missouri and Amendment 3, which is this abortion amendment that is on the ballot here coming up on November 5. And he brought it up on his national show this week, and here's what he had to say about it.
Missouri, red state, listen to this. They have an amendment on the ballot. Amendment 3, Right to Reproductive Freedom Initiative. This is what, if it passes, citizens of Missouri voting on it, this is what would happen. Legalize abortion in Missouri for the entire 40-week term of pregnancy up to the moment of birth. All right? 2, adds the phrase pregnant person instead of woman to the Missouri Constitution. 3, removes parental notification and consent requirements, allowing minors to undergo an abortion without informing their parents or guardians. 4, allows taxpayer-funded abortions in Missouri. 5, prevents women from suing if they or baby are harmed during pregnancy or during an abortion. Now, I can't imagine the good people of Missouri voting for this. I can't. I have to go so far as to say any person who would support that amendment, don't want to speak to. I would walk away. If you supported that, I would never talk to you again. And believe me, I'm an open-minded guy when it comes to politics. But this is Red China stuff.
That is well said on Amendment 3 by Bill O'Reilly. Now, the polling suggests that Amendment 3, which does all those things that he just mentioned, has a great chance of passing. There's a tremendous amount of money behind Amendment 3, as there is for all of these abortion amendments in various states around the country. But he's right. When you talk about putting the phrase pregnant persons into the Constitution, how insane is that? Right? Like, that's not even the thing that really comes down to life or death. And regardless of how you feel about the issue, that's just nuts. That is clearly written by some academic goober who can't even say it's only women who can get pregnant. That's what they want to put into the Missouri Constitution. Abortion where there's no legal consent if you're a minor from a parent. I mean, all that stuff. This is not just like, hey, we think that Missouri should allow abortions up to X number of weeks. It's not that. It's not. It is beyond extreme on this issue. Now, the no side, I've been talking to some more people over the last few days on the no side, and they are coming together. They are kind of working hard. We're going to get people on the show in the next few days who are on the no side of this to really paint the picture as to what this amendment is about and what this amendment does. But there's something else that I really think needs to start happening. The Republicans who are running statewide, and they're all going to win. Mike Kehoe, Josh Hawley, Andrew Bailey, the Attorney General, they've come out against it, but they haven't really made it part of their campaign. And I would love to see them do that. I mean, if you're on the Missouri side, let me know if you're seeing something different. If you're getting mailers for the candidates that also mention this Amendment 3 abortion ballot initiative, I'd be curious to know that. Since I'm on the other side of state line, I'm not getting the mailers and the digital media ads and things like that. But I would be curious because as far as I can tell, there is not really a concerted effort by the Republicans running statewide in Missouri, who, like I said, are all going to win. Republicans have every single statewide office in the state of Missouri. Governor, senators, obviously, treasurer, AG, they've got them all. So making sure you signal to your voters, even if they're more of a moderate Republican and, they're one of these like, I don't want to get involved in the abortion issue and I don't want to deal with that and that's not my place. Explaining how extreme this Amendment 3 is matters and can make a difference. Because basically, if you get all the Republicans, or even if it's 95% of them, to vote no on Amendment 3, it's going to go down. Because this is not just like your run-of-the-mill, like, I think we should have looser abortion laws in Missouri. It is abortion to the extreme in Missouri, which I don't believe that's where the people of the state are at right now. I don't. And those who are working on behalf of this Amendment 3, they're the ones as well who just went full bore here to make this thing as extreme as possible. That's what they've done, and that's what they're trying to achieve. And they're hoping that Missourians are not going to read the fine print. Because let's be honest, who does read the fine print on these amendment issues that end up on a ballot? Nobody. They just hear what they hear from media. They hear what they hear on social media. And they're like, oh, yeah, well, I'm okay with abortion, I think, to a certain point, so I'll vote yes. That's not what this is. This is as extreme as it gets. This will be California-esque abortion laws in Missouri if it passes.